welcome along to episode 79 of Percussion Discussion. Please check out our social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course our world famous YouTube channel where you can hear and see all of the interviews that we've done. And of course, if you subscribe, which only takes a second, it means you won't miss any of the upcoming interviews that we've got, and there are many of them, some great ones as well, so I wouldn't want you to miss those. So if you can take 2 seconds to do that, I'd be very grateful. If you prefer to listen on the go, then the great news is all of our conversations are available in podcast form, free to download. You can find those on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. So if that's your thing, you know what to do. Again, please leave us a short review if you can. It only takes a second. Just a few nice words would be very much appreciated. Of course, if you hate it, then put that. I don't care. On to today's guest. It's a first for the show. It's a non-drummer. It's a non-percussionist, but it's a great musician all the same. Delighted to have one of the finest UK bass players in the world, in fact, but he is British. He's been around a good while now. I'm not going to tell you exactly how long, but he started off with Icehouse. He's gone on to play for some incredible bands, Bryan Ferry. He's been the mainstay in Pink Floyd since 1986, 1987, I think. He's played for David Gilmour. He's played for so many different people. And today, we've brought him along to chat about some of the remarkable drummers that he has played with along the way. And you may also know him from the fabulous Rockonteurs podcast that he does with the fabulous Gary Kemp. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome the wonderful Mr. Guy Pratt.
You're very welcome.
And I do feel a little bit guilty. You know, I've got one of the most respected and revered bass players on the planet, and I make you talk about drums and drummers, so I apologize.
No, I that's why I'm here. I love it. It's really nice change, and no one ever, I'm the bass player. No one ever asked me about the drum, but so no, it's I'm very glad to do that because you've actually made me think of actually how incredibly privileged I've been in terms of the drummers I've worked with, because I've realised it's quite a list. I've never really thought about it before. So.
Yeah, I mean, and let's be honest, without bass players and bass players without drummers, we don't really amount to much. So I think it's important to know what we like and dislike about each other. I think so anyway. So
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I've always thought in terms of the music I listen to and love, I've always thought in terms of sections.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's always rhythm sections that I like rather than individual players. It's kind of, some people are amazing with some people, and not, and the thing isn't there with others. So there it is.
So look, you've played with enough of them. Let's be honest. And one that immediately comes to mind, and I was very lucky to have him as a former guest on the show, and that's your longtime drummer from Pink Floyd, a founding member, of course. As drummer, that sounds terrible. And of course, Saucerful of Secrets, Mr. Nick Mason. I mean,
Nick Mason, yeah. Nick's, what's incredible is having worked with Nick for so long is since we started Saucerful of Secrets, I've never played with this guy before.
Yeah,
it's amazing. This is the guy, and I also now totally. I mean, I always loved Nick, and I always loved to see. And like when I played with Pink Floyd, I always deferred to Nick on timing rather than Gary. I mean, because Gary's brilliant, and,
of course,
and Mr. Perfect, Mr. Precision 80s. I mean, I'm the same generation as Gary, and we come from that machine world. Whereas, but for Pink Floyd, it's got to be right back to kind of almost like that sort of Beyonce's 16th behind. It's almost hip hop.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is but with the Saucers, this is the first time I've ever played with Nick without anyone else.
Right.
And it's changed the character of how he plays so much because he hasn't got a net, not his wife, Annette. But and especially doing so much of that early stuff where he really, he's really, and I now really get, because we have a lot of drummers come to the show and they're just like, what, mate, Nick Mason, and now I really get it, and what's fantastic is he counts everything in half the time the rest of us do. When I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, he's going 1, 2, 3, 4. So he gives himself all this space within the beat, which is why he can just go, I'm in 4 now, I'm in 3 now, because it's brilliant. It's kind of like in the same way as it's like old blues singers when they play with themselves, when they just whittle in and out of time because there's nothing else to worry about.
Of course.
It's also why what's extraordinary is doing all the Syd Barrett stuff, which is, I mean, because especially when Gary and I are singing stuff together, and it takes us ages to nail it because the times, there's a bar of 5, there's a bar of 3, there's a bar, and you have to, everything's driven by the vocal, and Nick just sails through it like the easiest thing in the world, because he gets it. That's where he comes from.
Sure.
He doesn't have to work it out. He's not counting anything. It's absolutely brilliant, and I can't tell you what a joy it is. But also, there's this lovely thing that happens to all of us, which is that because I'm used to being on stadium stages with Nick.
Of course.
And so being in these, when we started, like at Dingwalls and the Half Moon, suddenly seeing Nick with all this energy in a sweaty little club, and I suddenly see that kid on stage at the UFO club.
Yeah.
And that takes me back to being that sweaty little kid at the Hope and Anchor or the Marquee, wherever. And I see Gary back at the Blitz. And you know what I mean? It transports everyone back to that fantastic place of where you started. It's so good.
Childlike enthusiasm.
Yeah.
You can't beat it.
And also because, and most of these songs, Nick's hasn't played these for years and years. A lot of the songs we play have never been played live. Yeah. So it's not new, but it's fresh. It's completely fresh. It feels like a new band. I've actually only ever played 3 of the songs we do with Saucerful of Secrets before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's all fresh,
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh. And the thing is, it's always uncluttered, just simplistic, but right with Nick.
Yeah, you say that, but there's a couple of things like on Astronomy and Interstellar, where Nick actually gets really, really nuts and like really, really fills it up. And I to the point where I get quite worried. Like, mate, whoa.
But he makes it feel uncluttered, if you like.
No, absolutely, yeah.
It's absolutely. Like nothing gets in the way.
It's incredibly musical. That's the thing.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm hope to, because I know you're supposed to be on tour with Saucerful now at the moment. I believe was something cancelled.
Well, I don't know when this is going up. We're starting. I mean, for now, it's next month. It's April.
Right. Okay. Good.
Pretty much exactly 2 years to the day since we were meant to go on tour.
Wow. Because I remember talking to Nick, and he said, I said, "What have you been doing?" And he went, "Trying to rearrange dates for." It's like a guessing. It was a guessing game at the time, wasn't it?
Because you had to keep rebooking because there's always that thing. Because no one knew when you were going to open up, but you did know that when you opened up, everyone was going to be after those dates. So you had to just keep. So I think it's like our 3rd rebooking. So, but we got it. We got pretty much everywhere we were going to do. So I know I can't wait. And actually, when we started rehearsing, because we were meant to do it, I mean, we cancelled our American tour when the Omicron wave happened.
Sure.
We cancelled our American tour when the gear was already on a ship.
Oh, no.
Luckily, it turns out even the production didn't know this. Luckily, it was on a ship going to Rotterdam to be moved onto a ship to go to Toronto. So that wasn't so bad. But although frankly, because that was a rescheduled tour. Not touring America in January is not the end of the world.
I believe so. Yeah. But I mean, moving on from Nick, I mean, some amazing places, some amazing drummers, I should say, you've played with. And one of our mutual friends, a good friend of mine, I know he's a really good friend of yours, is a guy who doesn't have much of a social media whatever the word is, you don't see presence. That's the word, and that's fantastic. The wonderful Ged Lynch. Now I know you've recently done we'll just say a project.
We did a project with Pete Townshend, which I brought him on, which for me was just incredible. Was the ultimate box tick because it's Pete's fault that I'm a musician at all. So I can't really talk about the project. I'm dying to, but all I can say is that Jed was just amazing, as he always is, and he hides his light under a bushel. That boy,
he really does, And the thing you're getting for me, there's 3 main things with Jed. You're getting a really wonderful drummer, a great percussionist, and a great hang as well. Because
he is adorable. He is just adorable. There's very, very funny. But I said one of the things I love about working with Jed is that he's a big picture guy. Is that when he puts his drum part down, that's not it. He's built a whole load of percussion into what he sees. So I said it's kind of like me saying I've got the bass part, and then picking up a bass with 2 strings and playing something, and people go, "Well, that's good, but it's not quite it." And you go, "No, no, 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 no." And then I pick up a bass with the other 2 strings and finish it off. And that's what Jed does. You know, he has this complete picture where sort of the percussion is really intrinsic to it, and he's always right. He's always right.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, I love that boy. Don't get to play with him anywhere near enough. But there you go.
What wonderful play. How did you guys meet then?
We met through Johnny Marr and Bernard Sumner when they did. It was electronic. I think was it their 3rd album? I can't remember which one it was, but which was like about at 98, 99, and they put this band together, and it was just for a TV tour. We went around Europe and we did like TFI Friday, and we did loads of live TVs, and it was basically the greatest band that never was. I actually, in my book, the way I describe it is that it used to be that whenever I saw Jed, we'd sort of sit and we'd have this moment where we just looked glumly at our pints and bemoaned this band that never was, that never talked. Although actually on my podcast, Rockonteurs, not mine and Gary Kemp's,
yes.
Johnny Marr finally confessed to me, because for years there was this thing of they blamed Bernard and Johnny blamed each other. Well, I'd love to go on tour, but he won't. No, I'd love to do it, but he won't. And Johnny finally fessed up, said, "Guy, it was me." Oh. So that's why that did. But that's how we met. We sort of fell in love and had this sort of bromance.
Yeah. And
then did various other things. I'm trying to think what else we've done. I mean, the funny thing is we haven't actually done all that much together. And we did some great stuff with Brian Johnson. Oh, we played on the Tom Jones Pretenders duet.
Right.
On
yes.
The version of Lust for Life.
Yeah.
And I got him in on for what was really just an exploratory day with David Gilmour for the On an Island album, which was just really, really early on day at Abbey Road, and David was really just trying. It was like kind of, it was at the blues jam stage of making the album. But funnily enough, the only thing that ended up on the record from that day was the track that Jed played on, which was Take a Breath.
Amazing. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Well, I remember on a drunken night out with Jed, and Jed had he said, "Oh, I've got a cold. I'm only going to have 1 pint," and I said, "Okay." And it was about 10 later. We were sitting in a bar, and he mentioned that he'd done something with Bryan Johnson, and my jaw nearly. So you were involved in that too, were you? Got him on that one?
Yeah. And I got him. I put the band together.
Amazing. Oh, just
it was actually a load of something because Brian had been working with Jimmy Nail.
Oh, right, okay.
Who, two great Geordie singers.
Yeah, indeed.
So that was fun. It's always fun with Jed.
Oh, great guy, and it's a pity we don't see more of him on social media. But I'll try and twist his arm.
I know he does subtle, nice little replies to things on
yes.
I think actually the Pete Townshend thing made him actually break cover and post a photo.
He did.
Which for him is the equivalent of sort of appearing naked at the opening of the Olympics.
But it was nice to see, and
yeah.
Right, I've got an album I want to talk to you about. Now, my friend and great UK touring drummer, Steve Barney, good mate of mine, and he often will send me things through suggestions of things I might like, and a lot of the times I've heard them, but quite a few I haven't heard. And he sent me an album through a little while ago, Toy Matinee.
Yeah, I thought it might be that.
Oh, and I was... sometimes I look at it and go, it's not going to be my thing. Well, big time my thing. That must have been a treat to do. It's just such a great album.
It's wow. Well, that's because it was a band. It was done like a band, and we had months. I was in LA for about 3 months working on that with Pat, because I was the first member. It was me and Pat originally. Yeah. And then we found Kevin Gilbert. Then we found Brian, and it's I always refer to it as it's like my first Velvet Underground album, in that only 300 people bought it, but they all started a band. It led to Sheryl Crow. The funny thing is in Britain, it's pretty much unknown, but I get so much kudos from American musicians for being on that album, like more than Pink Floyd or anything. But
really?
Like that generation that came after, I've met people who work with Dre, people who work with Beck, all those people, and they're all just like, whoa, Toy Matinee, man. And and of course, that was the fantastic Brian McLeod. And what was brilliant about Brian, because I was really worried, because it was a super, it was Pat Leonard, who's such an amazing, gifted pop, who's basically a prog writer trapped in the body of a pop genius. Right. And,
that comes across, doesn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, and but he just has this amazing inbuilt pop. And Kevin Gilbert, who was just one of the greatest talents, who never kind of quite found his pinnacle. And we tried, and I was just really, really worried about it being LA, and just that whole kind of Toto Uber Muso sort of thing. I've always been, I've always got a little bit of the kind of West London punk rocker,
of course,
about me, and which I think is one of the things that Pat liked about me. That and it was brilliant. Pat had this absurd studio. Pat had just made like $500 million for Warner Brothers with Madonna, and they just said, "What do you want to do? Do whatever you want. Here's a blank check." So, so it was just heaven, absolute heaven. So we were all on a wage, we were just hanging out, messing around, just and I'm just laughing. And that thing of the luxury of just having so long to work out songs and to get the parts together. And Brian, what I loved about Brian was very much ahead of his time. In the, like I said, this is at the end of the 80s. And the thing with drummers is everyone still very much wanted to be Jeff Beccaro or Simon Phillips, and it was all super tight and super music. And Brian can do that, but he comes from a sort of Bay Area punky background. He was in this band Wire Train. And he had this thing where suddenly he was playing like Ringo, and it was like, wow, which was amazing and fantastic and really refreshing. And of course, no one was doing that. And what's ironic is, like 3-4 years later, everyone was playing like Ringo.
Yeah.
And which gave it this lovely sort of English, slightly whimsical pop sensibility, which I think really added to it.
The whole thing is just, and it's been on since Steve
it's
sent
some
me
of the best bass playing I've ever committed.
I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, things she said, for one, the fretless, it really is gorgeous.
Thank you.
But there's
Last Play Now is kind of the vibe.
It's just wonderful stuff. But I hear different influences in there. It's the Ballad of Jenny Ledge, which I just hear that as a Steely Dan tune.
Yeah, a lot of people say that, and it kind of is, but it isn't. See, when I hear that, because I'd worked with Pat so much, people hear those chords and they think, oh, that's Steely Dan. I think, no, they're not. They're actually Pat Leonard. That's actually Pat's shtick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when you know somebody that well and you know what they do, I totally get it. But a wonderful, wonderful album, and I'm so glad that that Steve sent me it over, because it's I'm amazed. I mean, did it do well?
No, not really. No.
Did it not?
And everything got weird. Things got weird with Pat and Kevin, and I was advised by my manager not to sign the deal because it was weird. So I had publishing on it. I co-wrote 3 of the or 4 of the songs. So when it came out, I was just like credited as like a session musician, but I wasn't.
Yeah, of course.
Believe me, I was really at the heart of it. And I had to leave before it finished to go off on tour with Pink Floyd anyway. Right. So
okay.
And then but then out of that, because Bill Bottrell, who was producing it, who's like the greatest engineer ever, he started this thing called Tuesday Night Music Club at his studio, and all the musicians used to go and hang out down there. And of course, that ended up giving birth to Sheryl Crow.
Of course,
the Sheryl Crow album. So it was kind of, it was very, very influential in that regard.
Because Brian had an amazing career after the band. Stevie Nicks, there's all sorts of stuff. A great player, lovely player. I mean, you've worked with. I mean, is there any standout drummers that you've worked with? I know you did the I forget which Madonna album it was now, but there was.
I did 2 Madonna albums. I did Like a Prayer and Breathless.
It's the Like a Prayer.
Breathless was the one time I got to work with Jeff Beccaro.
Oh, I was going to ask if you managed to get to work with Jeff.
Hanky Panky is me and Jeff.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Now, were you?
He was just adorable. He was.
Were you when you recorded that? Were you kind of in the same space at the same time?
No, and I had to. It was quite funny because I'd actually gone to Miami to because there was a girl I knew who was staying with the friend I was staying with, and we started having this sort of little scene. And I snuck down to Miami to see her, and while I was in Miami, Pat called and said, "Listen, the Madonna session, it's on Monday, 9:00.
Yeah.
Hey, can you be here?" I went, "Oh, yeah, okay." So I literally had to fly back from and I was on time. And that was a joke that Pat made. He said, "Oh, okay. So if I want you on time for a session, and it's better if you're coming from 3,000 miles away." But I turned and I'd had the most wonderful weekend, right? A fantastic time with this girl who then became my girlfriend later. Yeah. And Jeff was asking me where I'd been. I said, "Well, I just went to see something." And we did the first take, and it went great. And it was really funny because Jeff just put his drums down and went, "Oh, Guy, Miami." But, and he was just wonderful. And on the other, on Like a Prayer was with Sugarfoot Moffat.
Oh, and what a drummer he is! Let's be honest.
Yeah. And because most of all that stuff was cut, except for the actual track "Like a Prayer," which I did as an overdub afterwards. But everything all that stuff was cut in like 2 days, and it was the whole band in the studio with Madonna singing in the control room.
Really?
And everything was like one take. It was amazing.
That's you wouldn't think an album of that stature would have been recorded quite like that, would you? Really? You think it would have been?
No, but it's interesting. There's lots. We always assume, right, especially with most 80s things, that how everything is just because I'm like I said, I'm an 80s boy. I spent all my time in the I'm used to being in the control room, with the producer, something not even the artist. That's where I'm comfortable. I don't really like being out on the floor unless it can be nicely set up so you can, because bass sounds shit on headphones unless I can hear an amp.
Yeah,
I don't really like it. I'm like I said, I've the control room is my natural home. And there was a reason I was bringing that. Oh yeah, but I was saying, so one assumes that a lot of these records are put together piecemeal. And what's amazing is how many aren't. What's amazing is, for instance, someone like Trevor Horn, who you would think is the absolute expert. He's way more of a band guy than you would think. Right. What he actually wants is a band in a room. So.
Oh, that's good.
Not that I've ever worked with him like that. I've always been in the control. That's because he usually gets me to get something he can't do. I want something I don't do. I mean, very interesting that it was Trevor, actually. This is a great thing about Trevor Horn. And he's absolutely right, which is that if you need acoustic guitar on a song, you get anyone but the guitar player to do it. Anyway, he would literally get the guy who's just delivered the pizza to play the acoustic guitar before he gets a guitar. And he used to get me to play acoustic guitar a lot. And the reasoning is absolutely brilliant, because if you get the guitarist, he's going to go, "Well, I can do this, or I can give you that, or how about I did this, or I did this." If you give it to me, or the pizza delivery guy, I'm going to go, "C, G, D," which is what you want.
Just simplicity. Yes. Yeah. Oh, it makes sense. I mean, Jeff Porcaro. When you mention Jeff, drummers and probably bass players and other musicians go weak at the knees at the thought of at the time. I mean, he passed away far too young. At the time, was his genius evident?
Oh yeah, no, it was gobsmacking, absolutely gobsmacking. And this was a fast shuffle too. And it was
I know the tune you're talking about. Yeah.
And no, he was absolutely gorgeous. In fact, actually, there was a follow-up album to Toy Matinee called Third Matinee.
Oh,
without Kevin, with I've forgotten his name. Lovely guy, Page from Mr. Mister.
Oh yes.
And Richard Page, and is it Richard? Yes. Check that. We put it out. And but that's the one time I got to play with Vinnie Colaiuta, although I didn't play with him together.
Okay.
There's a track called Freedom Road, I think. It might be a couple of tracks, but I remember the engineer saying to me, going, "Man, he said, if you want to feel good about yourself, just look at these meters." Because he said, "You and his bass drum are so tight." I was like, yes!
That's the ultimate compliment, isn't it, really? I mean, again, these names we're throwing out here, Vinny, it's like, it's just like the gods, really.
Well, the ultimate drumming album I did was probably was Storyville, the Robbie Robertson album. And that was when I was there for months. And we had everyone come in. Ginger Baker was there for weeks. And then the ultimate, a guy who had been talked about in such hushed mythological tones. Of course, you've got to remember, this is back when I was young, and everyone I was working with was older than me. And and of course, people in their 40s, the idea of people in their 40s, they were ancient. And so we had Zigaboo modalist.
Oh, right. Brilliant.
And who I knew about from the fine tutelage of Robert Palmer.
Yep.
And I said, and Robert used to talk about this guy. Like it was literally like he wasn't even real, and I just assumed from the way Robert talked about him, I thought he's obviously dead or 90 or something. And of course he wasn't. He was in his early 40s. He'd been working in a shoe shop in New Orleans, and he came and he was, oh my God.
Yeah.
And he's one of those things you couldn't even really see what he was doing. He just did stuff, and there was just this amazing kind of funky soup at me. And I remember, Robbie used to say, man, have you tried watching Ziggy? You can't even see. He said he's like he's mixing up gumbo.
Lovely.
And we had even Tony Williams. Tony Williams came down and played on that.
Which one?
But then and of course I was terrified. I mean, I'm not a jazzer. I was absolutely terrified when he came in. But then they got him to play like a 4 on the floor straight rock beat. And it wasn't really happening. And it's like, of course it isn't fucking happening, but why are you asking him to do that? Please, give me, give me some spaced out swing to do,
Yeah, that's...
who else was on that? Oh, Jerry Marotta.
Oh, lovely.
Who I'd already worked with on a Dream Academy. I adored Jerry.
Wonderful player. And his brother Rick is pretty fabulous as well, I have to say.
Yeah.
Oh.
And who else? I think there were others on that. I can't even think now. But yeah, so
was
like
Ginger?
I said, I've been incredibly lucky.
Wow. Was Ginger his usual affable
No,
self?
Ginger was. Do you know what was funny about Ginger was, because Ginger was always a few years older than that original 60s lot.
Mm.
And while we were there, Ginger had his, and so by this point, all the people I was working with, Pink Floyd and Robbie and everyone like that, everyone was in their early 40s, And you got to remember, no one had been in their early 40s. Everything we were doing was it was the first time rock and rollers had got old or middle-aged.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it was no one knew what to do. No one knew, do you get a mortgage? Do you send your children to school? I mean, what do you do? There was no. Now it's but while we were there, he invited us all to his 50th birthday party. And I remember thinking, like, 50, the fuck is 50? How does that work? And we used to have there would be times where like Ginger would be working out he'd work out some really complex drum part and it'd be lovely. And then we go to record it. And then he'd forget parts of it. And we'd literally be going, 50.
Game over.
Yeah, getting on a bit. Of course, now it's, I'm 60, mate.
Oh, dear me. That's a hell of a lineup of drummers, that, isn't it, for one album,
I'm sure there are others. I can't think who I've missed. But
Zigaboo, I mean, I believe Zigaboo used to handle the vocals for Meters as well, I believe.
That's right, singer.
Yeah. Amazing.
He was a lovely man. Loved that man.
Oh, it's incredible. I must revisit that album because
it's. Do you know I did really well because I did one of the tracks for my in lockdown I was doing these lockdown licks where I was showing people how to my greatest tips, which was really good fun, although nerve-wracking, and it was really great to revisit something because there was the song I did about Hold Back the Dawn. Actually has 3 basses on it.
Oh right, okay.
Just me playing chords, playing a fretless, and then a sort of trying to be Tony Levin. Failing miserably as usual.
I mean, so for you, right? What? And it's an interesting question, this because it brings up lots of different answers when you speak, depending on who you speak to. What makes the ultimate drummer?
The drummers I like are the guys who are listening to the song rather than me.
Yeah.
A lot of my, for instance, a lot of my when you're young, it's all about hitting the bass drum and the bass at the same time.
Yeah.
And when you get older, you realize it actually kind of really isn't, because like New Orleans music isn't about that at all.
No.
And for instance, like one of my oldest friends is an absolute favorite, and I feel absolutely privileged to have worked with him a lot over the years, and also to have him as a friend is Andy Newmark.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, and who I adore. I mean, I haven't seen him for ages, but we send each other very funny emails. And for instance, I feel like a real organic thing with. Because we've toured a lot together, we've recorded a lot. I've done a lot of stuff with Andy, and I feel a very organic sort of thing with him where it works. But he doesn't. But he's not actually doing what I want. He doesn't put his and it's like it's kind of either I have to change my patterns to put my notes with his bass drum, or just not worry about it.
Okay.
And I find it's better when I just don't worry about it.
So
because he's not really listening. He's a because great drummers are big picture guys.
Yeah.
They're listening to the song and they'll respond to something in the lyrics and they'll
because there is
it's the same with the bass.
There is a paranoia about bass drum and bass connecting to each other, isn't there?
Because it can be, because it's a fantastic and very, very satisfying thing.
Yeah,
but it's not necessarily what the song needs. It's nice for you, and a song doesn't necessarily need everything go gung, 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 gung. That's not necessarily what the bass might need to be loping along a bit, and the drums might need to be a bit more uptight, or the other way around. And they can work together without being tied at the hip.
I can see drummers across the world that's watching this or listening going, that's great. Let's just rewrite things a little bit, and it's nice because
obviously I prefer it. Obviously, I would like, but it's I get it's and I probably, if you'd asked me 20, 30 years ago, I probably would have said something completely different. No, but now I'm not. The tyranny of the bass on the bass drum.
Well, most of my gigs,
in the same way as Keith Moon never hit cymbals on. Keith Moon didn't hit cymbals with the bass drum. He didn't hit them on one. He didn't. It's like whatever worked.
Anything went, wasn't it? I mean, most of my gigs are reading gigs where I've got dots in front of me, and generally they're written where the bass will land with the bass drum. Which is it's quite a comfortable thing to hear, isn't it? A comforting thing to hear almost. And no, well, that's good. It's good.
The greatest bit of advice that I ever had was when I worked with Bernard Edwards.
Oh, right.
When I was 22, right, when I was hired by him to go and play on this Robert Palmer album. I know I should have quit then, because that bass credit on that album, Riptide, Robert Palmer, when it just says bass, Bernard Edwards and Guy Pratt.
Wow.
I should have gone, right, that's it. I'm going to go and be an accountant. I'm done.
Pinnacle.
I'm done here. And he obviously thought I was, I wasn't quite there yet, but he sort of saw something in me, and he used to take me off to the games room at Compass Point, sit me down and give me little lessons. And it was fantastic. And the one thing he used to say to me was like, "Guy, you want to show off? You want to do whatever the fuck, go wherever you want, go anywhere. Just be home for one."
Well, that's true, isn't it? It's true. It's very true.
It's a very parental thing to say. It's like, go out, be home for one. Be home for one.
I like that. It's like when drummers start some random fill and they don't quite know where am I.
Although, funny enough, I did. There's 2 records I've played on actually during lockdown where I've done ludicrously long fills. One was a Gary Barlow thing called Incredible or Unbelievable or something. I don't know, some swing thing. Yeah. And I did this fill where I just started. It was like, oh fuck, I don't know when I'm going to finish. And I just kept going, and luckily I ended up in the right place. And then one thing I was really pleased to play on was, There's Something About Jamie, the musical, the movie.
Yes.
Right. Well, Dan's a mate of mine, and all the and so is Richard, their bass player. And it was very, very sweet that they had this big disco opening number. And even Richard obviously played bass on most of it. They asked me to come and do the big opening number because I love it. I love the people who know that disco is really where my heart is.
Yeah, sure.
So and I did this one fill in it where I literally just went up the dusty end and started heading. I was like, oh shit, I have no idea where I'm going to end. Oh shit, and I just kept going and kept going, and luckily landed. And they kept it. It was brilliant. And when I went to the screening of it, Dan Sells came up to me. He came up with the most brilliant description. He went, "We kept your mastermind fill in." I said, "What do you mean mastermind?" He said, "I've started, so I'll finish."
Oh, lovely. Look, Guy, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Before we go, we have to talk about your fabulous podcast, The Rockonteurs. And if anybody watching this hasn't, I don't know, they must have been living under a rock or something if they haven't heard it. Just talk a little bit about it, because it is truly magnificent.
It is brilliant. Well, it's myself and Gary Kemp, and we talk to musicians or producers or anyone we think, but it tends to be musicians or producers. And what's lovely is that we kind of cover every base in that Gary's an artist, and so he can relate to everyone from the point of view of being an artist and under the pressures of fame and all that stuff. And of course, I'm a musician, so I can relate on all the other side of things and and because of that, because we're not journalists, people seem to be very, very comfortable talking to us. We always get something we don't know. Sure. We haven't heard before. You know, there's always a scoop. We've had a couple of big scoops. We have one story that actually ended up being a big story in both the Times and the Guardian.
Really?
Yeah, which is when Bob Harris told us that Nixon asked Elvis to spy on John Lennon.
Seriously?
And it's the funny thing is people think it's a lockdown thing, but we'd actually started doing it before.
Oh, really? I didn't realize.
Yeah, no, we started, but we hadn't released them because we were trying to get 10 of them together and having to go into studios and record them. And then, but what was brilliant about lockdown, you know, obviously not much was, but was that the whole world went to Zoom. You know, and it went, oh my God! So now we can talk to anyone, anywhere in the world. The other interesting thing is how the length of podcasts changed. Because podcasts were 45 minutes,
sure,
because they were based on the average length of a commute.
Oh right, didn't know that.
Yeah, apparently that's what. But after lockdown, it was basically make it as long as you want, because it's basically people who want to stay outside walking the dog.
Cool.
So, but yeah, we've done nearly 80 episodes now.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually
corkers coming up.
Yeah,
I must say.
I think you are number 80 for me, actually. So I think you are actually number 80.
Oh, well done.
I think so. Anyway, so but I have to ask, do you have a favorite episode? I know that's a favorite. Pick a favorite child, but
there's something about, and this seems to be universal. There's just something about David Coverdale.
Yes, that's the right answer.
Everyone just loves him so much, and we love him, and he's just so the right mix of kind of adorableness and preposterousness. And what's so wonderful about David is he absolutely knows who he is and knows exactly what he's doing. Yeah, you know. And he's one. And what was interesting about him, and he really, really knows guitars. That was interesting. He talks very specifically about guitars. But you know, again, that's another drummer, by the way, who I loved working with, was Denny Carmassi.
Oh yes, I know you did the Coverdale Page thing, didn't you? Yeah,
I did the Coverdale Page thing and then I did the Whitesnake album with him, and I loved that. I learned so much from him. Because I didn't really know that kind of rock world. And it's a lot less straightforward and a lot more adventurous. And you kind of think there's an awful lot of turning beats around and, you know, not just being straight 2/4 snare and stuff. So it was, you know, and he's got a brilliant head and just that kind of rock, solid, you know, Stonehenge groove. Nothing is going to move, you know.
But I know David has he's like an encyclopedia for music, because I spoke with Tommy Aldridge for we had a chat for at least an hour and 20 minutes, and he said, you know, if I change the slightest thing in a Whitesnake song live, David he's onto it straight away.
No, he missed.
And he doesn't miss a thing, you know, and I'm sure you'll know that better than most.
Well, what's funny though, because actually listening back to, because there's been a great remix and reissue of the album I did, Restless Heart, and it was great because it's very much a return to the sort of his blues rock roots. And it's actually really good. Now, listen, I'm actually really quite proud of some of my playing on it. Some really nice playing. Because at the time, I remember it being really simple. My favorite, because you know, everything David says is just the most brilliant quote. Right, everything that comes out of his mouth is amazing. And I remember at one point, I can't remember what I was doing, but I came up with some riff or something. And David went, Guido, crazy as I am about your playing, I'm afraid this isn't a Peter Gabriel record.
That's a really good impression as well, I have to say. You know, I try and pick things at random. Sometimes I don't know who they are, and you find out stuff like the Pat Leonard one, for example. I didn't know, but I thought, let's have a listen. But I have to say, as an old rocker, Brian Johnson was magic, and Joe Elliott,
fantastic.
Joe Elliott was so giving as well.
Joe Elliott, I don't know why we bothered turning up. Frankly, I think I said like 5 words in the whole thing, and then he disagreed with me or something. But he's absolutely brilliant. He was fantastic.
Just amazing. And you know, I urge anybody who hasn't heard it. It's not. I don't think. I think there's clips of it.
No, there's certainly clips of it. We don't. Yeah, it's just audio, but it's on every platform. It's usually number 1 on the Apple chart most weeks. So,
but do go and listen, because you won't. You know, have you had any drummers on yet, or has it just been
Nick Mason?
Oh, yeah, of course. Nick was the first one, wasn't he? Yeah.
Chris France.
Ah, really? I didn't realise. I've not heard that.
Yeah. And we've got another big drummer coming up very soon, in fact.
Oh, that's interesting.
Obviously, I can't say.
No, of course not. Excellent. Well, look, it's been an absolute joy to talk to you, and I really appreciate it, Guy. I really do. Thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome.
And good luck with everything. Good luck with the tour.
Thank you.
Fingers crossed it goes without any hitches whatsoever.
Yeah, all the dates on saucerfulsecrets.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I shall try and nip along to one if I can. I'll do my utmost. And
where's near for you?
For me, Manchester, Liverpool aren't too far away, I guess.
All right, well, just give us a shout. I'll hook you up.
That would be incredible. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. See you soon. Take care, Guy.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Brilliant, mate.